McGraw-Hill Ascent Audio presents The Steadfast Leader. Control anxiety, make confident decisions, and focus your team using the new science of leadership. By Randy Brazee and Geoffrey Vanderpal. Narrated by Patrick Lawlor. Publisher's note. In this audio edition, you will hear references to figures present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Foreword by Deb Dana, LCSW. The autonomic nervous system is at the heart of daily life. What begins with our biology shapes the way we live, love, and work. It is the neural platform beneath every experience, and yet most of us have no idea how this system works or how to work with it. With the development of polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges provided a modern map of the territory of the autonomic nervous system and a new understanding of the ways it shapes moment-to-moment experiences of connection and protection. As a clinician with a specialty working with complex trauma, I love neuroscience and have always brought an understanding of the brain to my clinical work. When I discovered polyvagal theory, I added what had been a missing piece of the puzzle to my understanding of clients' symptoms and suffering. I became intrigued with integrating a polyvagal perspective into my therapy sessions to help my clients learn to become active operators of their nervous systems and navigate their lives with a sense of regulation and safety. As I developed a polyvagal approach to clinical work, it became clear that the nervous system was an integral part of the therapy process, no matter what modality was being utilized. That in every session, a therapist was engaging with their client's nervous system. In order to introduce a polyvagal perspective, I had to learn to speak the language of the nervous system and create a structure for therapists and clients to engage in nervous system to nervous system communication. Out of necessity, I became a polyvagal translator. After years of developing ways to integrate science and psychotherapy, I've begun to explore ways to bring polyvagal theory to the population I call curious human beings. Polyvagal theory has a universal appeal in that it is not a clinical protocol. It is the science of how we are human and can be applied to every aspect of daily living. Since the nervous system is a common denominator in our human experience, learning how this system works leads to understanding ourselves and others in a new way. When we apply the principles of polyvagal theory, we can become active operators of our nervous systems, find regulation in everyday moments, and more skillfully meet the larger challenges that are present in our lives. The times we live in call for this level of understanding. There is an imperative to change the familiar paradigm that preferences brain over body and disregards the impact physiology has on our ability to communicate, collaborate, manage stress, and meet the challenges of the work environment. In The Steadfast Leader, Randy Brazee and Geoffrey Vanderpal brilliantly answer that call using their individual areas of professional expertise to integrate neuroscience and business and transform the way we think about leaders and leadership. The Steadfast Leader relies on the principles of polyvagal theory to define the qualities of a good leader and create the foundation for developing successful teams, finding financial success, and navigating the challenges of today's workplace. Brazee and Vanderpal introduce the concept of instinctive leadership and illustrate how integrative thinking, using both brain power and body wisdom, impacts organizational experience and business outcomes. Throughout the book, they stay true to their mission of bringing the worlds of neuroscience and business together, keeping a focus on understanding the impact of environmental and interpersonal cues of danger and safety in the workplace, and the consequences of autonomic state shifts to team building, productivity, and the decision-making process. Oliver Green, the fictitious executive introduced in Chapter 1 and then followed throughout the book, is an easy-to-relate-to figure whose journey illustrates the role of biology in determining how someone leads and examines the path to leadership through the lens of the nervous system. Each professional scenario demonstrates the ways changes in biology directly impact style of leadership, integrative thinking, and either interrupt or resource the creation of a sense of safety for leaders themselves and for their teams that is essential for success. The Steadfast Leader is a beautiful collaboration between two old friends, both experts in their fields, that presents a convincing argument for incorporating a polyvagal perspective into the world of work, and fundamentally changes the landscape of how we think about the qualities of successful leaders and good leadership. Introduction. What drives leadership, management, and financial practices in today's business culture? The global community wants to know. Since you're listening to this book, this is also a topic of interest for you. Yes, researchers have their theories and offer considerable insights into the intellectual and psychological factors that contribute to success or failure. But these theories are seldom fully applicable in real life. Researchers aren't at ground level experiencing the myriad challenges leaders and employees face in the workplace every day. What's more, daily challenges can exacerbate existing stress and trauma, which can negatively impact decision-making. This puts the success of the business, the leader, and the employee at risk. An instinctive leader knows how to avoid this bleak scenario. In The Steadfast Leader, we introduce you to the concept of instinctive leadership, not another leadership style, but rather a quality of excellent leadership, and how to strengthen this skill to improve resilience toward work stressors for everyone in the workplace. Drawing from the latest scientific research and applying it to the real world, we strengthen the topical theories and models and delve into them to reach what's really at the core, but so often overlooked. By emphasizing the instinctive cognitive dimension of decision-making, we fill in the missing piece of the puzzle needed to achieve success in a variety of professional landscapes. The idea for this work was conceived during a dinner conversation, many of which we have had over the course of our long-time friendship. On this occasion, we discussed the bridge between our fields of study, which led to a collaboration on several articles and ultimately to this book. Drawing from and combining our knowledge in the fields of psychiatry, Randy, and business, finance, Geoffrey, we explore the interface between neuroscience and the business world and present our findings and insights throughout this book. In Chapter 1, we explain the origins and components of the polyvagal theory, simply how the state of our autonomic nervous system impacts our thoughts and behavior in relation to instinctive leadership. This leadership skill requires leaders to understand how to unlock the full potential of their cognitive and somatic mental faculties to improve their professional outcomes. We discuss the three descending states of the autonomic nervous system: socialization and safety, mobilization, and immobilization, from the perspective of the polyvagal ladder, coined by clinician and consultant Deb Dana, who so graciously wrote the foreword to this book. To put this into context, we explore the conditions that can compel a worker to shift between the three autonomic states and the resulting consequences. In Chapter 2, we narrow down the real-life applications of instinctive leadership and the polyvagal theory in modern organizations. Considering the rapid evolution of technology and business systems, it is essential for leaders to compare the strengths and weaknesses of popular and emerging leadership styles. Therefore, we focus on 4 common leadership approaches: transactional, transformational, servant, and situational leadership. We discuss how the polyvagal theory can be integrated into these leadership styles to improve the outcomes of rational, analytical, and non-rational, intuitive, and evaluative decision-making. In Chapter 3, we answer the all-important question, how can leaders achieve success in terms of human resource management? Most organizations sensibly place much emphasis on talent acquisition, requiring leaders to have an in-depth understanding of recruitment and selection processes. However, depending on the recruitment staff's perspective and autonomic state, specific types of bias and discrimination often emerge during recruitment and selection. With that in mind, we offer suitable recommendations for creating a solid workforce and eliminating prejudice in the talent acquisition process. Using the example of the financial sector to underscore the importance of combining rational and non-rational decision-making, in Chapter 4 we focus on the main prerequisites for financial success in the modern business environment. We also outline several types of bias and discrimination that prevent leaders from making optimal financial decisions in their respective fields. We emphasize the roles of intelligence, emotions, and instinct in financial decision-making with the overall objective of illustrating how the business leader can combine multiple dimensions of their mental faculties to achieve goals. Our focus in Chapter 5 turns to the physiological qualities and personal attributes that define good teams. To illuminate how the polyvagal theory and instinctive leadership correlate with good teamwork, we stress the importance of the three autonomic states with regard to conflict and conflict resolution from the perspective of both leadership and staff. This approach highlights traits and skills that team leaders and members must cultivate to optimize the team's productivity. We also offer several recommendations for strengthening team performance. While the previous chapters focus largely on the leader's viewpoint, in Chapter 6 we consider the perspective of employees in successful leadership. Although leaders may attempt unique strategies for improving leadership outcomes, certain situations arise in which employees lack the necessary motivation to support their leaders. In such cases, leaders need to develop an in-depth understanding of their workers' intrinsic and extrinsic needs in relation to their job characteristics. Therefore, we narrow down several evidence-based measures that can improve employee motivation, retention, and overall satisfaction levels. In Chapter 7, we reveal the secrets leaders need to know to strengthen both their rational and non-rational mental faculties. We drive home the importance of nurturing intuitive intelligence in the modern professional environment. Given that there is no one-size-fits-all strategy in leadership, we encourage business managers and leaders to use innovative strategies to maintain an optimal cognitive state. In business, conflicts are virtually unavoidable, so we also provide the steps leaders need to follow toward resolution. Leaders will learn how to combine logical and instinctive decision-making in both calm and high-pressure environments. The book's conclusion summarizes all the factors that make a leader an instinctive leader, one whose strategy incorporates integrated decision-making in all facets of the professional landscape. It blends together the insights offered throughout the book into a usable takeaway description of instinctive leadership. To bring all these concepts to life, we provide an ongoing professional scenario based on a fictitious young executive named Oliver Green, a thread we weave throughout all the chapters. This executive, of course, could be any age, gender, race, or nationality working in virtually any industry. Rather than try to cover all our bases and muddy the playing field, we follow Oliver specifically so that you can understand how the concepts build upon one another and play out in different situations and circumstances. Although the spotlight is on Oliver, think of him as every man or every woman and apply his experiences to your own leadership approach and challenges. Our main objective with this book is to illustrate how modern professionals respond to different stimuli in their respective environments to build a structured plan to nurture skills and competencies that allow everyone in the organization, but especially leaders, to make optimal decisions regarding their physiological states. By turning off or mitigating defensive responses, workers can merge rational and non-rational decision-making in their daily practices. In addition to cultivating instinctive leadership, both leaders and employees will learn how to turn on their social engagement system during times of distress. This competency is vital for business leaders who handle complex scenarios on a frequent basis. The exploration of the factors that influence organizational decision-making reveals that staff performance and productivity are dependent on the characteristics of their surrounding environment and the people within these surroundings. Thus, the principal goal of understanding the polyvagal theory as it relates to instinctive leadership is to elaborate on how to identify and overcome fear and stress in the workplace and create a conducive work environment for achieving success. It is our intention to provide you with the information necessary to create a steadfast foundation from which to launch yourself and your team to ever greater heights. Chapter 1. Why Leaders Should Care About the Polyvagal Theory. What are the elements that shape good professionals and business leaders? Some believe that good leaders are born, while others embrace the belief that good leaders are nurtured by instilling adequate knowledge, skills, and experience. Although significant research has been performed to support these ideas in the modern business environment, the reality is that the studies are based on standard assumptions about human decision-making. The inherent focus on rational or analytical decision-making often conceals the fact that the professional environment is complicated, and that this type of decision-making is often limited or impractical. Senior and junior workers must learn to maneuver through their personal and professional challenges both at work and at home. Considering that even the most senior worker is still a human being, these challenges can accumulate and begin to influence their decisions at work. Understanding the polyvagal theory and how it applies to the business world is the first step toward demystifying the rational, analytical, and non-rational, intuitive, and evaluative factors that affect professional decisions in different environments. Let's begin. What is the polyvagal theory? The polyvagal theory is a concept that was developed in the 1990s by world-renowned researcher Stephen Porges, Ph.D., that explains our instinctive response to seek a sense of safety and/or connection with others in different circumstances, situations, and environments. We'll delve more deeply into the science and history behind the theory itself later, but for now, it's just important to acknowledge that in a typical environment, we human beings follow our daily routines and make decisions that do not require too much thought. Even the most challenging task can be accomplished if we understand how to resolve it. However, the polyvagal theory stresses that we also face uncommon scenarios that may force us to make on-the-spot decisions, such as whether to plow through, escape, or do nothing. Myriad situations can pull us from our comfort zones, leading to uncomfortable states such as fear, stress, and trauma, which shake our mental and emotional well-being enough to result in decisions that are not based on logic or forethought. In situations that cause the fight-or-flight response, the subconscious overrides the thinking brain in a process that's often referred to as amygdala hijack. The amygdala, by the way, is the part of the brain responsible for emotions and memories. When the thinking brain is relegated to the passenger seat, logic and reason and presumably good decision-making are out of reach. The polyvagal theory looks at the neurobiological mechanisms behind these behaviors and offers guidance on how to improve decision-making in the face of such challenges. While cognitive psychology concepts and models can explain most areas of leadership, business, and financial behaviors, human psychology has more primitive elements that have not been adequately explored within the modern business environment. Nevertheless, they are equally powerful and influential. The polyvagal theory can explain the underlying influences that are not fully addressed by cognitive psychology in modern-day leadership, human resource management, and financial disciplines. To illustrate this, let us introduce you to Oliver Green, and we'll learn what happens when his over-reliance on rational decision-making results in decreased productivity in his new leadership role. Putting the spotlight on senior executive Oliver Green. Oliver Green is the youngest senior executive in a stock trading firm where he has worked for 10 years. The company has been recording significant growth, and Oliver feels he's played a vital role in the organization's recent successes. He has established a formidable reputation for being an analytical thinker who understands when to cut losses or to continue to support the investment until it realizes consistent profits. One of his newer responsibilities as a result of his recent promotion includes recruiting new talent and supervising them during their first years of tenure. He is also in charge of handling interactions with major shareholders and resolving employee disputes. No amount of analysis can help him with these wild card responsibilities. While Oliver enjoys making investment decisions, he often feels overwhelmed participating in the recruitment of workers and the supervision of employees. Although other senior executives perform similar roles, they have decades of accumulated knowledge and experience and seem to easily make instinctive decisions when they lack adequate information. Oliver is stressed and feels that his responsibilities are draining him. He no longer finds satisfaction performing even the roles that had previously excited him. Whenever he is faced with a major decision, he feels disoriented. Sometimes he freezes up, uncertain whether his decision will have a positive or negative effect. Recently, he was forced to release 5 employees due to restructuring, a matter he found unpalatable and stressful. The accumulation of these issues has been affecting not only his overall outlook, but also his investment choices. In his own words, he's been experiencing an unlucky streak. Aware of his decline in productivity, Oliver sought advice from some of the more experienced senior executives, which included statements like, "Just copy how we handle these activities. It's bad luck, you'll get past it. Take a vacation. This job can be very stressful." And, "A few courses on leadership and human resource management will help." Although these responses were relatively useful, they were not immediate solutions to Oliver's problems. After persisting, he finally got some advice that resonated with him. Learn to be aware and to respect your gut. This response encouraged Oliver to question how he usually makes decisions. In most cases, he makes good decisions when he has enough time and knowledge to analyze his options. However, there are many situations where he is forced to make decisions without adequate information. In those cases, analyses are useless. He thinks perhaps he should start relying on his instincts as well. But how would he go about nurturing useful instinctive decision-making? Can you tell from Oliver's case that both rational and non-rational decision-making are vital to successfully hold a leadership position in the modern professional environment? Failure to resolve the conflict between the two decision-making approaches can cause a decline in performance and productivity. Non-rational thinking, which involves intuition and evaluation, is an important aspect of decision-making, but it is not cultivated in the modern professional environment. In his typical state, Oliver has shown that he can make good decisions. However, when he is in the sympathetic fight or flight state as a result of accumulated stress, his decisions are adversely affected by negative psychological influences. He needs to learn how to return to a state of balance where rational and non-rational decision-making can best guide his choices. And that's where the polyvagal theory can shed some light on how nervous system state shifts bias perspective. The components of the polyvagal theory. Stephen Porges published The Polyvagal Theory: New Insights into Adaptive Reactions of the Autonomic Nervous System in 1995. In a follow-up article in 2009, he summarized several features of the theory, including that the autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary physiological processes, such as heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and digestion. According to the article, the polyvagal theory proposes that the evolution of the mammalian autonomic nervous system provides the neurophysiological substrates for adaptive behavioral strategies. It further proposes that the physiological state limits the range of behavior and psychological experience. What this means in plain English is that we have the inherent ability to develop strategies that allow us to adapt to and respond to our environment, but also that what's going on in our bodies at any given time in response to stimuli affects our emotions, thoughts, and actions, giving us a more limited perspective. The article further states, the theory links the evolution of the autonomic nervous system to affective experience, emotional expression, facial gestures, vocal communication, and contingent social behavior, highlighting that social interactions are an important consideration in stable environments as well as when a person faces external threats. So what determines our response to stimuli in general? It's the interplay of the three subsystems of our autonomic nervous system. See Figure 1.1, which can be found in the print and ebook versions of this book. 1. Ventral vagal complex. 2. Sympathetic nervous system. 3. Dorsal vagal complex. The three components of the autonomic nervous system focus on different cognitive functions. Let's examine each. Ventral vagal complex, VVC. Foremost, the ventral vagal complex, VVC, is oriented toward understanding the mechanisms of social engagement. The VVC usually supports the neural processes that involve prosocial behaviors and social connections. Sullivan et al. Claimed that the VVC regulates and controls facial, head, and ear muscles, thereby allowing for coordinated communication, listening, and listening ability. For that reason, this subsystem of the autonomic nervous system determines social interactions and allows a person to decide how to resolve social challenges. In a business setting, the VVC allows us to determine and handle social interactions with our superiors, work colleagues, and subordinates. Sympathetic nervous system, SNS. The second component of the autonomic nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system, SNS. This component determines a person's response to an evaluation of their surrounding environment to determine whether to fight or flee. In other words, the SNS is responsible for the fight or flight response. The activation of the SNS can increase metabolic functions to the extent of mobilizing the human body to perform evasive actions. Other functions include increased heart rate, tensed muscles, and the release of hormones that mobilize the human body to seek safety or survival. Overall, the SNS can affect cognitive functions by altering behaviors to evaluate the environment and determine how one should respond to adverse events. The SNS is responsible for helping us determine how to respond when facing negative emotions or psychological influences. Dorsal vagal complex, DVC. The final component is the dorsal vagal complex, DVC. While the SNS focuses on evaluating the surrounding environment for danger, the DVC controls the neural and muscle systems to react to danger, terror, or extreme stress. Reliable research studies reveal that the DVC places the human body in a passive state.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?